Good afternoon. It's Dr. Michelle from Dirigo Food Safety, and I am coming to you today from beautiful, sunny, thank heavens, Maine, to talk about our next step in HACCP. It's the top of the hour. We're going live for office hours, and I'm going to give everybody a minute to come and join us. And then we're going to get started. Welcome to everybody who's already here and planning on tuning in. Turning in. I think it's even early for our folks in Europe to turn in. So give everybody a minute to come join us, and then we will get ourselves going. So today is Wednesday, April 11th. I'm Dr. Michelle Fanensteel, and I'm the CEO of Dirigo Food Safety. And I am bringing to you over the course of Q2 2018 a set of office hours to the salt-cured pigs so that we can all be on the same page when we talk about HACCP. You know, we end up talking about HACCP on the page a lot because there are a lot of folks who are doing commercial production, and when you're in commercial production, you gotta have HACCP plans. I want to point out that there's a difference between HACCP plans. There are USDA HACCP plans, which is what we're talking about. There are food code HACCP plans. We get a fair number of food code HACCP plans questions on the page. And I just want to say that even though food code HACCP is a little bit different, the actual steps of doing a HACCP plan are really pretty similar. And the step that we are doing right now is incredibly important. We actually ask this of every poster to tell us, what do you make, and how do you make it? You know, when we say recipe and process, please, this is what we mean. We mean, give us your recipe, tell us how you made this, and tell us what you're making. So with that, let's launch into this. So this is step 2 of HACCP. So last week we talked about forming your HACCP team and why it's so important to form your HACCP team. And so today we're going to talk about step 2 of HACCP, which is, what do you make? Now, I posted to the files on, if you go over to the left-hand side on the salt-cured pig page after this ends, I posted a template specification log. So we're going to cover that in a little bit after we talk about this actual step of what do you make. And then, of course, I'm always here for your questions, so ask questions, and we'll have a good time. So we're scheduled to do this for a half hour. If we end early, we end early. But I'm here, it's office hours, floors open as we go through. Okay, so the question of what do you make? This is incredibly important and is often, when somebody calls me, the very first thing that I ask them. Because you might think you know what you make, but you don't probably actually know what you make in enough detail to write a food safety plan. Okay, so behind me, I guess it's a little, I'm going to try and move my camera here a little bit so it's a little easier to see. But behind me, this is the a recreation of the table that I actually have my clients fill out when we first start writing a HACCP plan. Okay, this is if any of you have been with me while I've taught at Pigstock or out at Kate's or whatever, this is what we do. Okay, so when you start thinking, okay, I have all of these things that I want to make, and I have these products that I'm going to make, this is what we do. The first thing is we write down what's their brand name. Okay, now their brand name, that's not necessarily your market, like your market name, like your, you know, salt-cured pig best kielbasa. Okay, the brand that you are making is kielbasa. Okay, so call it whatever you want as long as you can identify it, but make sure that you're identifying the product name. And the reason that's really important is because we have in meat processing and in all foods really standards of identity. And if you are identifying something, okay, that is in the book, I'm sure I've posted it before, but I can post it again, but that is in the standards of identity book, you must follow that standard of identity. Okay, and there are things out there that we very commonly make that have a standard of identity, and you have to follow it if you're going to call it that. The most common one that I hear about is hot dogs. People want to make emulsified, uncooked hot dogs and call them hot dogs. You can't do that. You can't make an emulsified sausage and call it, you know, pepperoni pups, and not have the USDA either think that it's pepperoni or hot dog, both of which have a standard of identity. So you can make uncooked emulsified pink cased sausages, okay, but you can't, if they're going to be uncooked, you can't call them or allude in any way, shape, or form to hot dogs, okay? And even that's getting a little dicey. All right, so that's the first thing to know about what you're making is what you're making, does it have a standard of identity? Okay, so that's the first thing. All right, then the next thing, ingredients, okay? Here's where you list out all your ingredients in as specific detail as you can, okay? I want white pepper. I don't just want pepper. I want ground pepper. I want, I've had people put fresh ground pepper. If you're sitting there grinding it, do not tell me you have fresh ground pepper if you're not grinding it when you're making your sausage. Okay. Dried spices versus fresh spices. This is also pretty different. What kind of back fat you are using. All right. We develop these not only so that the USDA knows what we're talking about, but so that we can communicate what we're talking about. Because if you are expecting to make a salumi and that salumi needs back fat, you have to develop your manufacturing recipe from this, okay, or you should develop your manufacturing recipe from this. And I assure you, your salumi is going to turn out really, really different if you meant to use back fat and you use a different kind of fat. Okay, if you use belly fat in your salumi, we got problems, right? Because it's never going to work. All right. So when we put in ingredients, it's really important to be as specific as possible. Bench trim, ground sausage, ground fat, anything like that. It's all got to go in there if you're receiving it that way. And so this is how you're receiving it. If you are receiving back fat, okay, and it's in big old chunks of bat fat, don't put ground fat here, even if you're grinding it. That's part of the actual processing steps, which we will cover in 2 lectures. That's step 4. Okay, so put your ingredients in here as you receive them, okay? So then the next thing that we have to take into consideration is we have to talk about packaging. What sort of packaging are you creating, okay? If you are casing things, you can either put it in under ingredients or you can put it in under packaging. It kind of depends on how the casing is being used, okay? If you are bunging something and that bung is going to be peeled off, that's an ingredient, not a package. If you are bunging something and the bung isn't going to be peeled off, then that's a package. All right, also put down your labels in here. And the reason that's really important is we have to distinguish, especially with food code HACCP, whether or not you are doing reduced oxygen packaging, because that has a huge implication for the bacteria that we have to think about when we're writing our HACCP plan. All right, so that's what we have for packaging. Also include your labeling here. All right, labels must be printed with food safe inks using food safe glues. Okay, labeling is considered primary packaging. And the reason I have my clients do it this way is that should you ever want to like grow your business and get third-party auditing and that sort of thing, the better you define all of this stuff here, the easier you will have it when you go after a third-party audit, because you will already know that you are getting labels with food safe ink and food safe glues and that sort of thing. And I mean, in USDA production, we have to have letters of guarantee anyway. But I will point out, if I haven't pointed it out before, that letters of guarantee are pretty much worth the paper that they're written on. Everybody believes in them, but it's a belief. It's not an actual food safety system, okay? All right, and so then we have suppliers. All right, list your suppliers here. Again, with letters of guarantee, with approved supplier programs. The reason you have supplies is to make your product, okay? And so if you don't know where you're getting everything here, now's the time to find out before you go into production, okay? Approve suppliers for what you are buying. Use those same suppliers, because one of the things that small businesses really lose ground in is they keep reinventing the wheel. They keep not picking a supplier is a way of not making a decision. Now, you can have suppliers and you can have backup suppliers, but if every time you go to order Cure One, you don't know who you're going to order it from, the time that you waste figuring that out and getting the things in place to order your product is kind of crazy. So don't waste that time. Okay. Define out your suppliers, go through a supplier approval process, okay, and make sure that you have all the documentation that you need from these suppliers. All right. Then what we do is we take this entire amount of information and we determine what risks we have associated with our product. Okay. And so we're going to, and I'm going to go through an example with you. So I just want to explain the table before I go through it. All right. We define what the risks of the product are, and then we think about how to mitigate those risks, right? And so we can only do that accurately if we have gotten as much information down here as we possibly can. Okay, so let's do an exercise. I'm going to go find a pen, and if anybody's listening, type in a product that you want me to do this exercise with, okay? And then type in a product and then start typing in ingredients, or I'm going to start guessing, and that's not always the best way for things to go. All right, hang on. Okay. All right, nobody's going to give me an ingredient. Come on, guys. Drink your coffee. I know it's early on the West Coast. I'm going to make something up if somebody doesn't give me something. That's fine. I can make it up. All right, well, time's a wasting. I got people to see this afternoon. Okay, I'm going to go talk about lobster HACCP. All right, so we are going to make salt cured pig branded bacon because we all love bacon, okay? And our bacon is going to have nitrites up the wazoo because that's how I like my bacon, and I'm writing the HACCP plan. Okay, so the ingredients. All right, so I really hope everybody knows the ingredients that we put into bacon, but if you don't, now is a good time to learn. All right, so our bacon is going to come from, this is just regular plain old bacon. Okay, so it's going to come from pork bellies. All right, because bacon has a standard of identity. All right, so it's going to have a pork belly. All right, our bacon is going to have salt, regular NaCl. It's going to have Cure 1, number 1. Okay, we're going to have pepper. And we're going to have maple sugar because it's maple season here in Maine. And we're going to make a maple sugar bacon. Okay, so that's about what I put in my bacon. So bacon's good around my house. All right, so that's what we have. Okay, and so we are going to sell our bacon in 4mm bags. Okay, so it's going to be reduced oxygen packing. All right, so it's going to go through the cryovac. Oh, Jules wants me to add mustard, clove, and nutmeg. Okay, we'll make your recipe, Jules. Okay, now I'm glad you brought that up. So what kind of mustard? Are we using dry mustard? Are we using mustard seeds? Are we using like reconstituted mustard? That's the kind of stuff that you have to know. Okay, cloves. Are we using whole cloves or are we using dried ground cloves? Now, nutmeg, I'm assuming we're using dried nutmeg because nobody would stick a whole nutmeg and put it in your bacon. Okay, so we're using dry of all of those ingredients. Okay, so dry mustard. Okay. And are we using ground mustard or whole mustard seeds? Tell me, I'll add it in here and I'll write in the dried ground clove. Ground cloves. Ground nutmeg. Okay, ground. All right, dry, ground, great. Okay. Dried ground cloves, dried ground, and dry ground. Okay, I would like to point out the trick to writing a HACCP plan is rewriting it. Never try and get it right on the first time. So, okay, so these are our ingredients. If you can't read that, it's pork and salt. Cure 1, all right. I put down pepper, but what did I do? This should be black pepper, okay? Maple sugar, dry ground mustard, dried ground cloves, and dry ground nutmeg. All right, we're gonna make awesome bacon. So it's gonna get packed in 4mm bags, which, like most people know, is reduced oxygen packaging, but in case you don't, just write in ROP'd. Okay, the packaging is not coming pre-labeled, so it's going to have pre-printed and adhesive labels. Adhesive labels. Okay. If you are going after label claims, oftentimes we put label claims here because you have to have you have to submit those label claims to the USDA. And so if we are going for a get real, get Maine sticker, because we're here in Maine. Hang on. So we're gonna have get real, get Maine sticker, okay? And we write that down because those stickers have to be food safe. All right, I've got a couple of questions. Hang on. What if we use wet sorghum or maple syrup? Then you just write in sorghum syrup or maple syrup. On some level, we have to think that our inspectors actually know the difference between sugar and syrup. And most of the ones that I've met do. Okay, and then not for this recipe, but if I use carrageenan, what do I request from the manufacturer to assure that it's a safe ingredient? Okay, hold on to that question. I will totally answer that question, and we'll go through, because we've got to talk about that. Believe it or not, we got to talk about that from all of these ingredients. Okay, and we're going to have a conversation about something called generally recognized as safe. Okay. Because our friends at the USDA can have a kind of challenging time with that. All right, so this is where we're getting, these are all of our ingredients and all of our packaging. Okay, and now we're gonna write in our suppliers, okay? And so for pork, we're gonna get our pork from, I don't know, I should know somebody. Let's get our pork from Greg Gunthorpe. All right, Gunthorpe Farms, okay. We are gonna get a whole lot of the rest of this stuff from Butcher and Packer, all right. And Packer, P-A-C-K-E-R. Okay, and then all of our spices are going to come from, let's say all of our spices are going to come from UNFI. UNFI is a distributor that we have here in Maine. Okay, so this is everything that I've put in here. Okay, all right, so now the question becomes, what about risk? Okay, what are the risky things that I have in here that I have to start thinking about? Okay, well, I have pork, all right, and so I have to think about salmonella, S-A-L-M-O-N-E-L-L-A. So as much as I write that word, you'd think I could spell it. I have to think about trichinella, because we always have to think about trichinella in pork products. We have a restricted ingredient here, okay, so we have to worry about restricted ingredients, all right. Okay, and that restricted ingredient, Cure 1 and Cure 2 are restricted ingredients, accelerants are restricted ingredients, and we have to control for them when we're writing our HACCP plans. So I will probably, actually, now that we're doing this, I will probably use this and write this HACCP plan as we go through the whole thing, so that we can see, so that everybody can see one HACCP plan developing over the course of the quarter. No, we don't have to define the mineral content in the salt, Jules. Good question. Okay, so we have risks associated with our ingredients, okay? We also have risk associated with our process, all right? Bacon is a not fully cooked, heat-treated, not fully cooked, not shelf-stable product, okay? So what that means is we bring up the temperature, okay, a little bit, and then we drop the temperature back down. All right, and there are risks associated with that, okay? There are risks associated with ROP packaging, okay? So our kind of process-related risks, if you want to think about it that way, are heating, cooling, and ROP packaging. All right, so risks are not hazards. I will get well more into that when we go to step 6, when we talk about actual hazards and hazard analysis and that sort of stuff. Risks are very, very broad. Hazards are very, very small, okay? Just because something is a risk, pork is a risk for salmonella, but raw pork is not a hazard for salmonella because somebody's gonna cook it, all right? And it's a subtle difference, but it really means that we don't have to plan for all things in our HACCP planning, okay? Jules, if we cold smoke the bacon, so hold on to that question when we get to 2 weeks from now. You have to come back, sorry. 2 weeks from now, and we are talking about what our process is actually going to be. So I'm probably going to post, and we can have a discussion for these purposes about what temperature we're going to smoke to. Because believe it or not, well, if you read on the page, you would believe this. There's no definition of cold smoking. Okay, cold smoking is not like there's not a legal definition, which is why we call bacon heat treated, not fully cooked, not shelf stable, and we have what we call critical limits around how hot that bacon can get, how cold that bacon can get, and what we have to worry about in that process. Okay, so believe it or not, bacon is not a particularly easy HACCP plan to write. The critical limits are tough, and Appendix A and Appendix B, which were updated, and then AMP, the American Association of Meat Processors, then got them rescinded, kind of, first, or not rescinded, but like they're not going to enforce them for small producers for like another year and a bit. So the landscape is murky, to be sure, around bacon. So I probably should have chosen something easier, but you know, then y'all had backed me into a corner about doing a fermented shelf-stable sausage. It's even harder than this. So anyway, so that's what it looks like when we do step 2 of HACCP. Now, I have put in the files. I will put this actual table. I didn't want to upload this table until I like explained it to people. But in the files, I have put the product description and the product ingredients and stuff as we write them in an actual HACCP plan. Okay, so go take a look at those 2 pieces of paper, and you can see we're not going to be able to fill in all the information there because it asks for things like shelf life and that sort of thing, which is other stuff that the USDA needs to know over on top of your HACCP plan, and we just put it in for the documentation of the HACCP plan because it has to go somewhere, right? So, but you need to do this process with everything you want to sell, okay? And then what you do is you take all of this stuff, okay, and you turn around and you put it on the specification, okay? And you start with that, and then you start asking yourself, okay, do I have allergens? You know, we didn't list any allergens because, you know, there are not a whole lot of allergens really that go into bacon processing. And I'm sure we could come up with someone. I'm sure someone somewhere in hogs that I don't really want to know about uses soy binders or soy lecithins or whatever in their bacon. And so we're not going to be doing like an allergen plan kind of thing in this because I just want to make it as simple as possible. But that's if we did have an allergen, we would have an allergen over here as a risk, because that's something we would have to think about in our food safety planning. Okay, so I will throw up this table for folks' use. It's going to come under the guise of what we call HACCP general documentation, which lays out like the first 3 steps of doing HACCP. So we'll finish up the first 3 steps next week, where we'll talk about our intended consumer. Okay, so I want folks to be thinking about who eats your product. Okay, because there are some crazy things that you have to think about in this day and age around your intended consumer. So that's how we define what do you make. All right. Next week we're going to define who eats what you make, and then the week after that we're going to define how do you make it, and that one's also really important. Getting your product right and getting your process flow diagram correct cannot be overstated in how important it is. Okay. So anyway, we are almost at the bottom of the hour. I want to open up the floor for questions. I'm trying to think if I saw anything crazy over the page in the past week. There were some questions around food code HACCP versus other kinds of HACCP. If you are doing food code HACCP, so you're doing this in a restaurant because you want to smoke bacon in a restaurant, I would still go through the 5 pre-steps of HACCP because you're going to need to know this information in order to follow your food code. All right, so couple of questions. What type of certification for pathogen reduction does a spice supplier have for not heat-treated, shelf-stable product, just SQF compliant, or is there more? Okay, so this is fun. And then, yes, I will get to your, this also answers your carrageenan question, Andre. So in our ingredients that we have here, okay, if you are making a raw product, it's a lot easier because you don't have to worry about salmonella in our spices because people are going to cook your product. If you are making a ready-to-eat product and you're taking dried spices and sprinkling them on top of something that's already cooked, then you have to really worry about that those spices are free of any pathogens, salmonella or listeria. And in that, we usually ask for a lot by lot or batch by batch, however the spice company does it, certificate of analysis. Okay, if you are I wish I had a different answer, but spices that are used in a ready-to-eat manner, and they need to have a lot by lot certificate analysis, and having SQF or BRC or something like that is really important. Okay, and it exponentially increases the chance that they're going to meet the zero tolerance standards on their certificate of analysis. But the spice recalls have gotten to the point where I think, if at all possible, you should be getting certificates of analysis from them, from your spice dealers. If that is not possible because you are buying them at retail, one, it's an awful lot safer because somebody, when you're buying your spices, like you go to the grocery store and you buy your spices, somewhere along that chain, a certificate of analysis has been produced. Okay. The most risky place to buy spices then is from your distributor. All right. And you have to talk to your distributor like somebody like UNFI. So if you sell through UNFI, you need to be SQF certified. Talk to your distributor about how they approve who they are going to sell from. Okay. And then honestly, I wish I had a better answer, but you pays your money and you takes your chances, because I feel like on spice recalls, it's like it's when, not if, it's going to happen on your spices. and so spices are some of the riskiest things that we have out there. Okay, so now for ingredients like carrageenan, okay, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I feel like I mispronounce that all the time. For ingredients like carrageenan, what you have to do is you have to go and you have to look up that it has been generally recognized as safe, GRAS. GRAS, generally recognized as safe. Okay, there is a whole list of things that are generally recognized as safe. I'm assuming carrageenan is generally recognized as safe. I actually work with a company here in Maine that produces it, and they go through a ton of hoops to make sure that it is safe. And so you should be able to find out that it is generally recognized as safe. Then you need to have, if in USDA production, you need to have a letter of guarantee, okay, that it is being, in fact, made safely. All right, and for all of these ingredients, for your Clorox, for your cleaners, all of it in USDA production, you must have a letter of guarantee. Now, I will tell you that your letter of guarantee, if something happens, holds zero legal weight. All right, and so it is necessary but not sufficient to protect you. Okay, get them, by all means get them. But it's not everything that you need to do, and you need to do supplier approval programming. Now, over on my business Facebook page, I'm going to be doing a live office hours on approved supplier programming either this week or next. I don't really remember, so you can go like my business Facebook page and you'll get, and those videos will pop up. I don't do those as live office hours. I pre-record them, but I am doing approved supplier programming really, really soon on that. Okay, so that's the product. So this is the product we're going to take through for the whole I want to say semester, but for the whole quarter. All right. I cannot mention. I have non-disclosure agreements with my clients. So if you come work for me, nobody gets. Or if you come and are my client, I never tell anybody who you are. I'm sorry, but there are good Carrigean companies out there, and if you ping me offline, I can point you in the right direction. Okay. So with if there are no other questions, we've reached the bottom of the hour. I have to go talk to a client about fisheries HACCP and fully cooked lobster, which you think bacon's a pain in the ass. Nothing in comparison to lobster. So, all right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Again, I'm Dr. Michelle Fanensteel. I'm the food safety admin here at the Salt Cured Pig. We love you all. We thank you for your participation. We're so happy you're here. Remember, recipe and process, recipe and process, and we'll see you back on the page. Have a great afternoon, everybody.